Hello and welcome to my woolly PhD. My name is Liz Scuff and this is a weekly video vlog thing about what I'm currently learning and making this week in my PhD in anthropology, all about wool. You can find a brief overview of the project in the introductory video. This week I've been learning about walking, and walking is quite a thing in the arts, in writing, in performance spaces, but it's also quite a thing in some of the humanities disciplines, particularly like geography and anthropology. So yeah, I've been reading a bit about not only mostly walking as a methodology, right? As a way of exploring an idea or gathering sort of what we call research data. And so there's a few articles or things I'll mention that I was having a look at. So one was specifically about walking in Iceland, and it's a book chapter. The chapter's called Walking with Landscape, and it's by Elva, Björg, Einarsdóttir and Katrín Lund. And the book is called Researching with Proximity, Relational Methodologies for the Anthropocene. And it's edited by Outi Rantala, Veera Kinnunen and Emily Höckert. I'll put it in the show descriptions, and that one's an open access book, so you can just kind of read it online for free. That's very cool. But what's the book about? I'll just read you a bit from the sort of introductory abstract. The book authors developed more nuanced ways of engaging with the environmentally vulnerable Arctic. They counter distancing, exoticizing and even apocalyptic imaginaries of the Arctic by staying with proximate, which means close, by staying proximate with mundane places and beings of the north. You know, in academia, honestly, sometimes the words, anyway, proximate means close, distal means further away. Mundane doesn't mean boring, it means everyday. Anyway, I don't think it means boring, it just means everyday. So anyway, staying close with everyday places and beings of the north. And the volume engages and plays with familiar tourism concepts such as hospitality, visiting, difference, care, openness and distance, while expanding the focus from binary and human-centric approaches of hosts and guests to questions of well-being among multi-species communities. And this is super interesting to me, and this probably really fits in the sort of post-human umbrella of, let's say, inquiry that's kind of an emerging, let's say, trend in anthropology and other disciplines at the moment, just where humans aren't sort of continually seen at the centre of everything, instead just sort of a part of these sort of ongoingly changing and evolving systems. Another book I have dipped into but not read cover to cover, but I think you can get a lot of good articles about it online. It's called Walking Methodologies in a More Than Human World, Walkinglab, and it's by Stephanie Springgay and Sarah Truman. And they've got a whole website, at least one of them's in Australia, not sure about the other, but they've got a whole website. It's called walkinglab.org, and they describe their work as drawing on feminist, queer, anti-racist, anti-ableist and anti-colonial thought and practice to question who gets to walk where, how we walk, under whose terms, and what kind of publics we can make. I think that's really interesting. Last one, Walking Utopias, the Politics of Walking in Art and Anthropology by Roger Sansi. It's another open access article and makes an interesting comparison between walking in the arts and anthropology disciplines. I don't know, I sometimes don't find like these comparisons a way of framing a discussion that I particularly enjoy. I don't know, I think it's partly because I've got a bee in my bonnet about so many of the craft books that I'm reading in like craft academic books. They're mostly talking about art and craft as a way, as the skill set to create art, or they're comparing handcrafts to arts. And I think I'm going to get over myself about it at some point, but at the moment I got a little bee in my bonnet as someone who's researching what we call low-tech crafts. Yes. Anyway, let me get over myself for a moment. Walking as a methodology in anthropology does some really interesting things. It puts focus on sort of place and on movement, rhythm, sensory experiences and how people, there's human and non-human, not human people, and things inhabit places together and move together, sense together, and kind of how they create stories together. And it might seem kind of obvious, like, of course, but so to sort of contrast why it's a particular thing, right? Probably the majority of anthropological researchers focuses on humans and what they think and feel and do in the stories they tell, which is the point of anthropology, right? But along with many other disciplines, people's bodies and the places they occupy have mostly been positioned as kind of vehicles to explain things or as backdrops to being human, rather than kind of a deeply integrated and enmeshed part of being human. And so it's kind of a little bit of human exceptionalism, a little bit sort of sensory hierarchies, which I think I've talked about. I've talked about that before. If I haven't, I'll do that for the next video. Or just Google sensory hierarchies. And it's also a little bit sort of capitalist marginalising of the body. I think it's a mix of many kind of cultural threads, right? The way in which place is backgrounded, and the body is kind of backgrounded as just a vehicle for the identity, for the self, for cultural world making. Anyway, so I think, yeah, walking as a methodology has potential to bring into focus a lot of things that traditionally aren't in focus in anthropology. And anthropologists walk a lot in the field, I believe. So, you know, oh yeah, it's 14 days until I go. I'll be able to tell you in 16 days how much walking we're doing. No, it'll be a while. But what does it look like walking as a methodology? So often it looks like walking with other people in places, and the unique kinds of conversations that emerge by moving through place and space, and that they are different to the conversations that happen in other places. Like places direct conversation and relational interactions in lots of really different ways. And those conversations and interactions are also really different to sedentary situations where you're being still. And there's quite a few different, I've come across quite a few research articles that explore those kind of conversations and the way landscape and place shape conversation as it unfolds, and also the kinds of relational interactions people have, so maybe not in the conversational style. But I just think it's super fascinating to think about how do we perform our identities in different places doing different things. Like, it also makes me think about knitting groups, right? The kinds of conversations that are had and things people talk about in knitting groups are really different to if people were sort of not in a knitting group, sitting somewhere or doing something else, not knitting. And how not, oh, I know, it's a total side tangent, but how much I love being in knitting groups. I mean, you'd think I'd get there a lot more often for how much I like it. It's just really nice to be somewhere where you can just talk about knitting for several hours. And like, no one's bored with that. So anyway, I like those. But yeah, it makes me think, there's a way in which I can perform my identity as knitter in a way that I can't in most other places in my life. And so when we go walking in landscape with others, how are we performing our identities differently? And then when we go walking on our own as well, what's our inner kind of world and our sensory experience as we're kind of moving through a place? Like, I'm thinking about, I'll be in Reykjavik for a week first, and how will the experience of moving through this place be different to moving through the farm space and through nature spaces, and it'll be just, I don't know, be interesting. And so walking methodologies are particularly being used to think about environmental concerns, because of course you're often getting outdoors with them. Some of them are urban, so also thinking about urban design processes, also about the impacts of capitalism and concepts of growth, progress and modernity I've seen as well, and also being used to explore different ways of thinking about and doing tourism, including the concept of slow tourism, which was a term I only learned this week, somewhat self-explanatory. It's also really super interesting, particularly in a place like Iceland, where tourism's a really big deal, not just in terms of the economic contribution it makes into the country, but the way in which it is changing the landscape and the culture and identity for Icelanders, of which I all know this much, almost nothing about, but I think it's certainly a really interesting thing to look at. And I'm very excited to learn more about walking as methods and thinking about how it might be relevant to my research. And I don't know what walking opportunities I'll have beyond, everyday walking, but it does make me think about also the difference between creating intentional walking as method opportunities, like organising a group to go on a walk together, or knitting and walking or something, right? Versus the way that walking sort of as an everyday thing without any direct intention sort of might emerge as a theme in my field notes and my experience. So I'm going to be really interesting just to see what kind of role walking plays in the research. I've definitely been thinking a lot about shoes in my pre-departure planning and how to be comfortable being on my feet a lot in different environments. And in the cold, because it does get cold here in Melbourne, but not Iceland cold, and also long flights. So I think I've got it all worked out. If I had endless amounts of luggage, it would be easy, but I don't. But also, shoes and walking also makes me think about biosecurity. I have a colleague who just wrapping up their PhD and telling me about biosecurity issues on horse farms and things. You can't bring your horse boots from Australia. You can't take them there. And I was thinking, I don't know if that's the same for sheep farms. But anyway, I got some new farm boots, so I will not take them out the house until they'll start their walking life in Iceland. But anyway, it also did make me think about walking and knitting. Do you walk and knit? Some people walk and knit, like go for a walk and knit at the same time. And I have tried it and I don't think I like it, because it feels like I kind of ruin both activities by combining them. Like it's a kind of multitasking when the whole point of each activity is not really to multitask. And it might be that I just need to learn to do it better, so I don't have to sort of concentrate on the knitting so much. I don't know. My jury's out on that. Have you tried it? Did you like it? Did you get better at it? Anyway, I'm thinking about walking as a method in research this week. What have I been making? I need some backing music right now, from really, really sad backing music that then goes really good and then is just kind of neutral. So let's start with the sad so we can finish on a good note. I was hoping to go, hey, yay, look at all this excellent progress on my Faerdy vest. I've got the first motif band done past the sleeves. Anyway, I'm looking at this because this is the pattern, right? So you do this one, then you do this one. But there's another, don't want to give the whole pattern away, sorry, Gudrun. So this is offset from this, right? These are offset from there. So when you're doing decreases for the stick, right, you can't just start at the start of the chart. You'll all know this if you've done decreases in a fair isle thing before. I have not. So you have to work out based on what's below here as to where your pattern's going to start. So I finished all this and then I'm ready to start this, knowing that this has to be kind of offset a little bit. And I spent, I reckon, 15 minutes going, this doesn't make sense. I knitted a little bit and then went, that's not right. Then we go over and over. It took me ages to realise I have knit the top half of this wrong. It's all supposed to be offset. I don't know if you can see the difference, right? Here it kind of goes, this pale teal green goes kind of snakes up and down. I've done it in big clumps. It's nice, but it's not what the pattern calls for. So I've got to go down to this kind of salmon layer. I've got to rip back 7 rows of, I don't know, what is there, maybe 200 stitches, or could be more, per row of Fair Isle. I was pretty depressed. Oh, I wasn't depressed. I was glum about it last night for a while. But the nice thing about this wool is that you can rip back without worrying about it kind of dropping back stitches on its own. So I don't know, in the next few days when I get a moment, I will pull it back and fix it up. It does just make me think that I might not get it done in time to leave, which is what I was really hoping for. And I think that goal might be out the window now, but it means I'm taking it with me because I don't want to leave it at home and not get it done. That's the sad news. I finished the leg warmers for my daughter, but in true Liz style, I forgot to take any photos of them whatsoever. I will try to remedy this, and sweetheart, if you're watching, help me remember that next time we catch up, let's get some photos of the leg warmers on your pegs. Anyway, she loves them. They are adding greatly to her winter comfort, which makes the mother in me very satisfied, so I'm happy about that. Now, you've possibly not taken a word in that I've said, being so distracted going, gee, is that the vest Liz showed us last week? The grey one she was talking about dyeing? Yes, it is. What did I dye it with? I dyed it with, here it is. So, if you remember from last week, again, I forgot to take a before and after photo. Anyway, so this is, if you can see it very well, there's some little stripes there that are a bit hard to see. I don't know that we're getting the best. Or maybe you can kind of see a bit better light. Like it's actually quite a lovely green. I wasn't happy with it when I pulled it out of the dye bath, and I thought, gee, I hope this gets a bit lighter. It did get a bit lighter, and in daylight it's lovely. But it's called, this is the Landscapes dye in flax. That's what I used. I tend to think they might be overestimating how much dye you need. I don't think it needed quite as much. But anyway, I went from like, oh, might have messed that up, I wonder if I can strip it back a bit, to, oh no, that's really good. I'll wear that a lot more often than I was wearing it when it was grey. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that's the happy note at the end after the slight disaster of the vest. Although I must say, with that Faerdy vest, at some point I thought, what if I've done the whole sweater wrong? I was relieved to realise, no, it's just these past 7 rows that are out of sync, so that's good. Maybe I'll have that fixed up by the time I do the next video. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back next week. And if I haven't already spoken about sensory hierarchies, I'm going to talk about that next week. Okay, see ya.